Yo, what is going on, Xbox and PC fans? Hope you're all having a great week. Lots of news today for gaming and hardware and a whole lot to discuss, so let's go. As usual, games are up first, and I'm going to start noting the time in the description below for those of you that only want the PC hardware news. I mean, you're going to miss out on all that sweet gaming action, but you'll be out of here quick, and my girlfriend will be jealous for sure. Anyway, to start things off, it looks like AMD have begun working with developer Fraxis Games to bring DirectX 12 to Civilization 6. They plan on putting full support for asynchronous compute, as well as explicit multi-adapter under the new generation API, so in addition to having the well-known Ashes of the Singularity, we'll now have another DX12 enabled RTS to play, and let's be honest, a new benchmarking tool to use, which is always nice because the picture of how well these different architectures of GPUs can handle these new improvements in these next generation APIs will become more and more clear as more titles that support them are released and can be tested on various hardware. Spoiler, I may be selling my 980 Ti for a Vega if the current trend continues. I'm not too happy with the recent nerfing of my performance anyway with Vulkan on Doom. Trying to use async compute on my Maxwell hasn't been going so well, I can tell you that. But moving on, those little Japanese kitty cats are a hit and Pokemon Go servers have been overwhelmed with traffic. If you're having trouble logging in now, which you may be because of that, just wait until the international rollout is complete. They're going to need Skynet for this thing. The new Xbox One S Gears of War Special Edition is set to release in just a few short weeks. Along with a copy of the game, this console will include support for high dynamic range over HDMI 2.0, along with 4K Blu-ray, a 4K upscaler for all your current Xbox One games, and a seriously spacious 2TB hard drive on a console is pretty sweet, including an awesome looking custom paint job on both the console itself and the controller, which is the new improved one by the way, with Bluetooth and a longer range, and a textured grip should be nice. This thing will set you back a hefty $449, but if that's not value, I don't know what is. A lot of new features in there. For roughly the same MSRP as the current Xbox One, this thing should be awesome. And if you're a Gears of War fan, that custom look, custom sounds, I'm sure they'll have in there as well, should just be really, really sweet. But tiny box, big features, and it looks ultra beast mode for all you couch-loving media junkies and gamers out there who want to stay in touch with your PC friends while chilling in your recliner. And I may just have to trade in the Elite, without the controller, of course, to pick one of these things up. And some personal gaming news, I just started playing the new Unreal Tournament, and even in my first game here, when I have no idea what the hell is going on, I'm still having an absolute blast. Add this one to my list of free-to-play games at the moment and hop in there if you get a chance for sure. Last up for software, and the game that never seems to end, Grand Theft Auto 5 has just gotten another awesome looking expansion, Rockstar's newest Cunning Stunts DLC. This should be available for download now, and although it looks super fun, this official update is nothing compared to the massive update being put out in late August by GTA modder Josh Romito. His Grand Theft Auto 5 Redux is a super ambitious overhaul of basically the entire game, with updated 4K textures, improved AI, completely rewritten weather systems, and more. And I thought this game already looked phenomenal, but with more and more powerful hardware coming out all the time, why the hell not? Speaking of new and more powerful hardware, it appears I may have missed a pretty big story recently. Along with most of the media, it turns out that despite garnering nearly no media attention whatsoever, Nvidia's latest high-end and supposedly amazing for virtual reality Pascal-based graphics cards haven't been so amazing in reality. Apparently, neither Pascal-based GPU, the GTX 1080 or 1070, has been able to work with the HTC Vive over DisplayPort since they launched nearly 2 months ago. This means that if you're using the single available HDMI out on those cards for, I don't know, a monitor maybe, the other VR compatible ports, aka the 3 display ports that you have remaining, will not get you into the game, and therefore you will have no VR at all while rocking what is literally the most expensive and quote-unquote best VR setup available with a top-of-the-line, brand-new GPU and the highest-priced VR headset you can buy. I mean, that sucks. Well, Nvidia have said that a patch is coming out soon to remedy this. To put this into context, the initial release of the GTX 1080 was way back on May 27th, and the issue still isn't fixed, and in fact, the latest driver from the company, version 368.69, that was supposed to bring with it enhancements for VR specifically, has actually made matters worse. People that have loaded the latest driver on either 10 series card have noticed they are no longer getting any GPU boosting whatsoever while using VR on either the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive, if you can get the headset working at all. So, while not a big issue for those of us without one of these cards or without VR, it surely would be an issue for me if I just dropped $2,000 or more for a VR headset and a GPU to play on those things. You know, and it's been 2 months and you've had no resolution whatsoever. That's no good in my opinion, but hopefully these issues will be resolved soon and will not impact their latest entry-level VR-ready GTX 1060. I just find it crazy that this was not all over the news. VR is supposed to be one of the key features and strengths of Pascal, and 2 months after its release, it still doesn't work and literally is more broken than ever. So Nvidia, get with the program on this, and my advice is if you're going to buy a Pascal-based GPU or card in the near future, I would wait for a patch if you have VR in mind, or go with a card that has 2 HDMI outputs that's pretty much made for VR in particular. So that's my advice on that. But in some other Nvidia news, it looks like the company plans to take the fight back to AMD in what is now the new entry level for some seriously powerful hardware. With the previously announced fight between the GTX 1060 6GB version and the 8GB packing RX 480 taking place between $200 and $300, this new war will be waged at an even lower price point. Industry insiders today pointing to an unknown source as saying that Nvidia will shelve the idea of a low-end, cut-down GTX 1060, throwing their previous plans out the window to release the reduced spec and memory-based model to be known as the GTX 1050, which frankly makes a lot more sense and should be far less confusing to consumers in my opinion, so that's a good thing. Now, I admit I was a little down on this card before as a GTX 1060 because of the lower VRAM amount. However, I did say if you could get a great deal on this to go for it, and I stand by that, and it looks like Nvidia is set to deliver that smoking deal. With a cut-down version of the same GPU that resides on the GTX 1060, the GP106, this little brother will not only feature half the memory, but it will be a little bit lighter on brains as well, featuring just 1,152 cores from the 1,280 that make up the full GP106 on the GTX 1060. The GTX 1050 now looks very much like AMD's RX 470 in terms of both performance and Nvidia's and AMD's selection process, with these GPUs being chosen to go into the GTX 1050, more than likely just missing the cut of being thrown into a fully operational GTX 1060, just as the RX 470s are basically partially disabled RX 480s. If this card comes out at the rumored asking price of $149, pitting it squarely against the similarly priced 4GB RX 470, that's a pretty nice move in my opinion. This card should offer fantastic 1080p performance and gaming experiences, and while it won't do very well at higher resolutions beyond 1080p, at $149 it doesn't have to. Consumers looking to buy this or the RX 470 won't likely have to push super high resolution monitors anyway. If it's comparable to the RX 470 in terms of performance, which I fully believe it will be based on the specs, this will be another compelling choice for consumers that are looking for a GPU in that price range, offering newer features and an architecture that's clearly more at home than Maxwell with newer APIs such as DirectX 12 and Vulkan. There are some wild cards, of course, a few of those being, can AMD's RX 470 actually unlock into an RX 480 for only $149? Does the RX 470 have a big step up in upcoming titles that may use those newer APIs with its hardware-based asynchronous compute engines? Or will the masses of people at that price point want and or need the superior VR experiences that Pascal should provide? pending Nvidia gets those VR issues worked out, of course. You know, I for one don't think it'll come down to VR performance at that price point. Again, anyone looking to buy a GPU for $149 isn't likely to be looking at buying an $800 or $1,000 VR only setup just for the headset and the rig anytime soon. I do think the next generation API performance might be a factor. I know it would be for me if I was looking at buying one of those cards for the long haul. And I do think the RX 470s may still very well be able to unlock into that full-blown RX 480. It's also possible, however, that the GTX 1050 could potentially be unlocked, at least to unleash the full complement of GP106 cores as well, making it basically a memory-gimped GTX 1060 simply by flashing the VBIOS. And I know I said no SLI was a bummer when I thought this card was launching as a cut-down 1060 for $250, but I certainly don't expect SLI at $150, even though I do see a few people leaning toward that if they want to just build their system a little bit of power at a time because of money constraints, or just because of an interest in SLI and multi-GPU setups, whatever the case may be, or just wanting a really good deal on a lot of performance. There's a lot of use case scenarios for SLI and Crossfire that, you know, I could see someone swaying toward Team Red for at that price point if that were an interest to that person. So at any rate, we'll have to wait just a bit longer to find all these things out, but one thing is certain, we are going to have a fight on our hands down at the $150 price point by the end of the year, which is amazing. I'm so legitimately excited for the millions of gamers that will be able to run out and buy these cards and finally be able to play some real deal Holyfield 1080p gaming like a boss with everything maxed out. It's just going to be a massive upgrade over what's currently available right now as far as consoles and what's in most people's PCs. Speaking of that, being in most people's PCs, these things are there in terms of price and also in power consumption. These two cards, the GTX 1050 and the RX 470, should be tuned to be just as close to ideal as possible in terms of the performance per watt. Running a chip when it's maxed out, or if you give a GPU an overclock, you're going to get less and less performance relative to the wattage you're giving it. So it's the law of diminishing returns, but these things should almost be as efficient as possible, and they should use very little power, just over 100 watts each, I imagine. They'll basically go into any computer that has a physical slot available, which again would be great for consumer uptake. I imagine even partner cards for these will likely just stick to the 6-pin power plug as well, while their bigger brothers, the GTX 1060 and RX 480s, both appear to be getting another good chunk of available power to them, with the partner cards I've seen so far featuring an 8-pin plug. So I'll cover those cards in detail when they arrive on store shelves shortly. But in some other non-GPU related hardware news, finally, it looks like Samsung is ready to release a 4TB consumer solid-state drive based on their 48-layer 3D VNAND technology. They've managed to pack this into a standard 2.5-inch enclosure that's only 7mm tall, which is freaking bonkers. It's just crazy how fast solid-state storage is quickly heading towards greater and greater densities, and therefore capacities and speeds. Unfortunately, with the speeds at this point, the 4TB Evo is still stuck with the old 6GB per second SATA interface, meaning you'll be limited to roughly 550 megabytes per second either way in terms of reads and writes, just because you're pinched by the bus. But either way, for everyday computing or just as an upgrade from a hard drive, this thing should be epic. 4TB will hold a lot of games after all, and whatever else you like, and application loading times should be great with features like RAM disk caching, standard to all Evo drives. Just don't expect this for free. Rumors have this thing coming in at $1,200 plus, but right now the 500GB model, which I have personally, at $149 is a swell deal with great capacity and similar features like RAM disk caching that work great to increase loading times in games and everything else. So I'd recommend that one for sure. Anyways, lots of great stuff coming down the pipeline, guys, and I've got a lot more analyzing reviews coming as well. But I just want to let you guys know that I appreciate you all greatly, old subs and new alike, and even you randos out there. Thanks for it all. I'll see you in the next one, and peace out.